Chapter 4, wherein the cavalry officer serves under a Knight of the Red and faces a Banelord of Antar. The Caron river crossing outpost turns out to be a barely fortified and very rudimentary camp some 10 kilometers from the actual bridge across the river itself. Hidden in the forests of southern Antar, the outpost serves to prevent the Antari from moving troops or supplies down the old Imperial Highway. To that purpose, the King's army has garrisoned the outpost with some of its best, a half-company of the elite Grenadier Guards Regiment. A small unit of dragoons has been assigned to accompany them as messengers, scouts, and, if necessary, a cavalry reserve. Thus, your duties are simple. Patrol the area around the outpost, keep eyes on the bridge over the River Caran, and maintain contact with other nearby outposts and high command. Okay. For 6 months, you have discharged these monotonous duties, leading your men through endless patrols through the seemingly boundless forests of southern Antar. You have spent countless days riding single file down narrow dirt trails and game tracks, rain or shine, through sickness and health. Of course, you have not been idle over this long stretch. You have had plenty of time in between patrols and courier missions to see to the condition of the men under your command. You have used that time profitably to... I feel like we've got the loyalty of our men anyway. Drill my men relentlessly is not really something I want to do, so we've inspired them by example. You have made a prolonged and determined effort to lead your men by example. You're at the head of every patrol. When a river needs to be forded, you always try to cross first. Before long, your men seem more sure of themselves, if only because they know that should they fall into a trap, you would end up dead before them. Well... We'll see about that. As summer turns to autumn, the weather begins to take a turn for the worse. The sky is overrun with dark clouds, which disgorge an overwhelming amount of rain. The paths which you ride upon, formerly firm, turn into a morass of knee-deep mud under the weeping sky. After a month and a half of this muddy hell, you step out of your cramped quarters one early morning to find the ground frozen solid. The trees around the outpost are covered with a thin sheen of frost, and a bitter northerly wind sends stabs of cold through your thick woolen tunic. Before you can go back inside to find your greatcoat, a grenadier ensign, shivering beneath a large fur-lined cloak, approaches to inform you that the outpost commander wishes to see you and the other officers in his office. The commander of your outpost and several other satellite camps is a Wolframite nobleman of the oldest pedigree, Lord Captain Sir Enrique del Hunter, 12th Viscount of Wolfswood, a Knight Captain of the Order of St. Jerome, as well as an officer in the Grenadier Guards. He is a Banecaster of the 9th caliber, a powerful force on the battlefield with his knightly bane-hardened plate and enchanted longsword. Lord Captain Hunter is the epitome of the Grenadier Guards officer, dashing, handsome, and reckless to the point of foolishness. His disposition is perhaps well suited for an elite and highly prestigious regiment of heavy infantry, but in his current position commanding a section of a vast and porous defensive front, his aggressive talent is wasted. Despite his reckless streak, Captain Hunter, as he prefers to be called, eschewing all noble affectations and titles on duty, seems a relatively competent leader. The captain greets you warmly as the ensign ushers you into his office, and you take your place among the other officers. "Ah, Castleton." He steps forward to shake your hand, as is his habit, even when among his own subordinates. "Very good. Glad you could make it. Damned cold won't be making your life much easier, will it?" You make small talk with the captain and the other officers for another few minutes as one or two late stragglers file in. When Captain Hunter is finally satisfied that all of his officers are present, he clears his throat. "Gather around, gentlemen." Captain Hunter produces a large map and unrolls it over the top of his desk. As you and your fellow officers crowd around, you can see quite clearly that it is a somewhat rough chart of the immediate area. "I know many of you have been hit with a bit of ennui over the last few days, so this should come as good news. We're about to do a bit of scrapping." Captain Hunter explains the situation. The night before, one of the advanced listening posts had spotted a large group of Antari heading south along the road towards the bridge, perhaps 200 or so in all. With them are apparently a series of large carts loaded with crates. "As you well know, gentlemen, winter will soon be upon us. It is likely that some lord of the Congress is attempting a final push against our forces further to the east. I would think it very likely that this force is a supply caravan, loaded down with food or winter supplies for every army might be gathering out there. Thus, it is imperative that we stop this force. It is clear that the captain is set on battle. A few worried murmurs rattle about in the crowded room. To stop such a force would require immediate action without adequate preparation or reinforcement from the other outposts under the captain's command, against a force that outnumbers the entire Tiaran garrison 4-1. Captain Hunter outlines his plan. He intends to ambush them as they cross the bridge, sending the cavalry element of the garrison, that is to say you, ahead to scout the area and prepare the ground first. The captain himself will lead most of the rest of the garrison behind you, setting up an ambush on the far side of the river. When the entire column arrives and begins its way across the narrow wooden bridge, Hunter's grenadiers will attack the flanks and rear of the column. At the same time, you and your dragoons are to occupy the fortified toll house on the Tiaran side of the river, acting as a blocking force to prevent the Antari from escaping the ambush and continuing down the Imperial Highway. While the captain rarely asks for his subordinates' opinions on their orders, you can't help but feel that the captain's plan is... It's not necessarily utter foolishness. I think it could work. It is really reckless, though. Is it necessary? It's a good question. It's probably beneficial. The rewards are great. The risk is enormous. I think we're going with too reckless. It's not utter foolishness, but you try to look at the big picture to soothe your nerves. It only serves to make you realize that should Hunter's plan fail, the outpost would likely become easy pickings for an Antari warband, which in turn would allow an enemy force to outflank the main body of the king's army. Over the next quarter of an hour, Captain Hunter goes over the ambush positions in detail, using wooden tokens to simulate your forces, as well as those of the enemy. When he is confident that you have all reached an understanding over the planned ambush, he dismisses his own grenadier officers, leaving you alone with the captain. Captain Hunter beckons you to approach. You step up right to the edge of the desk. You must think me mad, Cornet, to send 50 men against 200 like this. Before you can respond either way, the captain continues. No matter. I'd think myself mad if I presented such a plan in the mirror. No need to worry, though. I have a plan to even the odds, and you'll be the one to put it into action. Captain Hunter reaches into a large desk drawer and pulls out a bulky canvas satchel. With one hand, he flips open the flap to reveal a large block of blood-red wax, smelling of cinnamon and pine sap. Next to it are hundreds of strips of parchment, neatly bundled, each etched with an intricate series of runes. Bane seals. I would much rather entrust this task to one of my own officers, but seeing as the only unit of horse available serves under you, I suppose you will have to do. I require you to set these seals in preparation for a cast when you first arrive. I've drawn up a diagram and placed it at the bottom of the pack, so there is no excuse for any error. Needless to say, this cast will set the opening odds in our favor considerably. It would not be hyperbole to say that the success of the operation depends on it. Thus, I shall require you to make preparing these seals and setting them in the proper pattern to be top priority. The captain sets the satchel down in front of you. Take this with you and inform your men. I want your patrol saddled and out the gate in 2 hours. Dismissed. Satchel in hand, you head for the enlisted men's barracks to rouse your dragoons and inform them of the upcoming action in which they are to take part. Around you, you can already see the grenadiers assembling by platoon. It will take them nearly half the day to arrive to the ambush position on foot. You try to ignore the nervous sensation in the pit of your stomach as you push open the rough wooden plank door and enter the smoky and ill-lit common room of the barracks. This will be your first engagement leading your own men into combat. There will be no Captain Montes to offer you advice, no fellow cornets to watch your back. You and you alone will be responsible for leading your men to victory or death. Your men are eating breakfast when you inform them of their new assignment. Despite the obvious danger of the mission, they wolf down the stew and black bread quickly and are at the stables, saddling their mounts within half an hour. 6 months without any sort of excitement has left them spoiling for a fight. You saddle up and strap the satchel to Arachne's side, giving your saber and pistol a last check. You climb atop your mount and ease the animal towards the outpost gates. By the time you arrive, your men are already present, mounted up and ready to go. Your heart pounds in your chest as your horse carries you to the head of the formation. Not even the chill morning wind can cool your anxiety. After a quick glance over your shoulder to ensure that your men are in formation, you face forward. Dragoons, advance. It is 10 kilometers as the Griffin flies from the outpost to the bridge, but the winding path down through the woods makes the actual traveling distance more like 20. Normally it would be an easy ride of 4 hours or so to reach your destination, but today time is of the essence. It would be wise to pick up the pace a bit more. You could also risk trying to go as fast as possible. With luck and good horses, you could make the trip in less than an hour and a half, but the strain on your mounts would be immense. Do you... We're not riding at full speed. That's not going to work. We're going for the middle option. Pick up the pace a bit. You attempt to maintain a relatively quick pace on the way to the chosen point of battle. While you try to rest your horses as much as you can, you are still forced to push them to get to the bridge before noon. The Caron River Bridge was built in the days of the Old Empire, spanning the wide, sluggish river at its narrowest point. A series of granite arches carry the roadway from one low bank of the Caron to the other. The road itself is covered with logs, split and laid flat side up to maintain a manageable surface during the rainy season. On your side of the river, at the very edge of the river bank and not far from the road, stands an old toll house of field stone and wood. You send your men to scout and secure the area immediately across the bridge while you investigate the old building. The toll house is empty but in good shape. The thing was abandoned when the king's army took control of the bridge, and you quickly understand why Captain Hunter would choose for you to take position here. The walls are thick and solid, better to keep out both the harsh winter and Antari musket balls. The house itself possesses windows on the second floor facing the bridge, excellent firing ports. In addition, a low wall surrounds the main building and the ramshackle stables, allowing further protection for your horses. After a few minutes, your men return to reports that the immediate area is clear. With the area secure and your men's horses tied up in the stables, you must now take the time to carry out Captain Hunter's orders. You search the satchel and do indeed find a diagram instructing you on how to set the bane seals in the proper positions. Thankfully, the diagram itself is clear, and Hunter's handwriting is readable enough for you to understand it without too much puzzling. The casting pattern is a simple one, requiring you to set the seals upon the trunks of the trees on the far riverbank. As you set your men to melting the wax, you begin preparing each of the strips of parchment. As you count out the parchment strips, you come to the realization that the captain's diagram is full of redundancies and double sealings. You consider the possibility of arranging the seals more efficiently and using the remainder to extend the pattern, resulting in a more effective cast. Of course, you could also simply pocket the excess bane seals and sell them later. Such tools of the banecaster's trade fetch exorbitant prices in almost any town. What are we going to do with that? Let me have a look at this. We're not exactly the most intelligent, are we? Are we able to do that in a better pattern? Or does that count more towards soldiering? I mean, a sergeant is not going to be able to offer any helpful advice, I don't think. Redundancies and double ceilings. You know what? Screw it. We're setting a more efficient pattern down and using the rest to extend it. You try your best to come up with a more efficient pattern, but such a solution eludes you. Okay, fair enough. That's where the intellect comes in, I guess. After an hour of taxing your brains, you finally give up and order that the seals be set down in the original pattern. The whole process from start to finish takes 3 hours, thanks to the time wasted on your failed attempt to come up with a better alternative. You finally finish up 3 hours after you first began. Okay, so in the future, if there's anything that requires any sort of intelligence, just don't think about it. With the Bane Seal pattern set up, the entire apparatus merely awaits a caster of sufficient caliber to unleash its destructive potential. In the meantime, you are left to your own devices while you wait for both the enemy and Captain Hunter's relief force to arrive. 3 opportunities immediately appear to you. The most obvious choice is to rub down and feed your horses, who remain still somewhat fatigued after your ride from the outpost. Keeping your mounts healthy and ready to go would likely prove an asset in the coming battle. Secondly, you could ensure that none of the Antari escape the trap prepared for them by cutting down a few trees and using them to block your end of the bridge. As treacherous as the roads are this time of year, the river is far worse. You have little doubt that a slow death by hypothermia awaits any fleeing Antari willing to take their chances in the icy water. Lastly, there is the fact that while the toll house's windows are large enough to serve as firing ports, they are perhaps a bit too wide, leaving your men open to return fire. Taking the time to cut proper firing loops might lessen the chances of a lucky shot killing one of your men. I want to do all three of them. Can I do all three of them? No. Okay. Which are we gonna do? We're blocking the road. You order your men to begin blocking the closer end of the bridge with trees and brush. Brandishing the small forester's hatchets issued to all dragoons, your men set themselves to chopping down a pair of smallish pine trees. After an hour, the men finally succeed in felling the two conifers and dragging them so that they lie across the roadway, forming a chest-high barrier to any form of escape. Just as your men finish their work, you begin to hear the sounds of boots marching to five and drum behind you. Over the next few minutes, the sounds grow louder until finally you see the captain himself leading his column up the road on horseback, resplendent in the bane-hardened plate of a knight of the Order's militant. Captain Hunter rides up to you, carefully guiding his horse around your impromptu roadblock, his face a picture of exuberance. "Ah, Cornet Castleton, I trust that we are prepared to receive our Antari visitors." When you answer him in the affirmative, the captain grins and dismounts, taking the reins in his hand. "Good. We shan't have much longer before they decide to pay us a visit." He points out a smoke trail rising from the woods on the other side of the river. "A party of locals wouldn't dare risk detection so close to the outpost, but a column of armed men would. They've likely stopped to warm up and rest their horses." Hunter pauses in thought for a moment before frowning. "They wouldn't be doing that in the middle of the afternoon unless they're expecting a fight. Their leader must be a smart one. He knows that this bridge is our last chance to stop them." Hunter looks over his shoulder and beckons the rest of his great-cloaked men to follow him. "Well then, let's get to our positions before they decide to press on." The captain shoots you a serious expression as he walks past, his warhouse horse behind him. "Saints guide you, Castleton." You and your men return to your positions within the toll house as Captain Hunter leads his grenadiers across the bridge. You sit in anticipation, staring at the column of smoke in the distance. A few minutes later, the captain waves the yellow signal flag in your direction, telling you that all is in readiness. You relax for a moment, then realize that the rising smoke from the other side of the river is gone. The Antari have doused their fires and are back on the move. Soon enough, you see the head of their column marching down the road. The leader is a giant bearded man on a large on a large war horse, resplendent in bane-hardened armor. From his back rise a pair of metal and leather frames, rising well over his head and covered with feathers in a way reminiscent of angel wings. He is an Antari church hussar, one of the most feared warriors of the continent. The Antari looks to his sides. For a moment he pauses, staring at where you know Captain Hunter has hidden himself. Then, after a moment, he shakes his head and rides on. The Antari mutters something to the standard bearer beside him, a scrawny man carrying on his shoulder a banner emblazoned with a grizzly bear, rampant with a greatsword. A series of heavy carts follow them, surrounded on all sides by a massive mob of ragtag infantry. As soon as the enemy commander sets foot on the bridge, you feel the sensation of a banecaster at work, pulling you towards Captain Hunter's position. The Antari commander feels it too. You see him turn in his saddle, but it is too late. You hear the staccato sound of splintering wood in the distance. From your distant vantage point, you can see the trees on the opposite side of the river bend, twist, and finally disintegrate into a storm of wooden shrapnel. The entire column is churned into chaos by a sudden storm of meter-long splinters. Men fall impaled or mangled by the sudden attack. Even from 300 meters away, you can hear the anguished screams of agony and shock. From the toll house, you see the entire commander pick himself off the ground, his magnificent warhorse turned to a gory ruin, his armor scored and bloodied. You see him pick up the tattered remains of his flag from the shattered corpse of his standard bearer. You hear him bellow orders in the primarily melodic tongue of the Ansari as he tries to bring his men to order. Then you see 100 black specks fly from the forest in high arcs and land on the road. Explosions rock the chaotic mass of the Antari column as each of the grenades burn through their fuses and explode. The already shattered Antari formation begins to disintegrate into an unordered mob. Some run for the woods only to be cut down by a sudden volley of musketry. Captain Hunter has sprung his trap. From the other side of the river, you can hear your commander crying for blood as his men charge out of the forest with fixed bayonets. Tierra and victory! Kill them all! What little you can see of the battle is a chaotic tangle of limbs, bodies, and steel. Obscured by the swirling clouds of powder smoke, the already chaotic nature of hand-to-hand combat becomes pure confusion to your eyes. As the smoke begins to clear, you begin getting a better glimpse of the situation. Attacked from both sides, the Antari are not doing particularly well. With the superior reach of their bayonets, the Grenadiers are slowly whittling down the numbers of the remaining Antari defenders. A dozen or so Antari try to escape over the bridge, but your men quickly open fire on them. The firefight does not last long. Your men exchange a few volleys with the Antari. One Antari musket ball catches one of your men in the shoulder. Your sergeant is certain that the man will live, but without the use of his arm, he is effectively out of action. After 2 or 3 minutes of firing back and forth, the small band of Antari facing you lose any stomach for battle. The 3 or 4 still on their feet hurl themselves into the river, preparing to take their chances with the icy current. With your attention turned back to the battle, you see that the situation has taken a turn for the worse. Fighting at the head of his men, the armored Antari commander is cutting a swathe through the Grenadiers, trying to stop him from escaping. Likewise, Captain Hunter is laying about left and right with the burning blade of his longsword, clearing a charred path of carnage as he tries to engage the retreating hussar. You take a look at your men. Their rifled carbines are accurate enough to make some slight difference in the distant melee, but you know that the meager weight of fire your small unit could throw would hardly allow you to control the course of the fighting. However, you note that the Antari are still entirely unguarded on the flank facing you. A mounted charge would be risky, but might just be the thing needed to force the enemy to capitulate. Thinking quickly, you shout an order to your men. Our horses are not... well, they might be ready. They are fatigued, sure. I didn't completely exhaust them, so they might have some fight left in them. Alright, you know what? Gotta take a risk sometimes. You're quickly reminded that your horses are in no shape to make a charge. It looks like you'll have to fight from here. Why even give me the choice then? You order your men to keep up a steady rate of fire. The rifled barrels of your carbines allow your men to shoot accurately from far away, but the fact that they must wrap every ball in a cloth patch to let it catch the rifling doesn't do their rate of fire any favors. Firing as quickly and as accurately as they can, your men manage to down a handful of men before you hear a great roar coming from the Antari force. Fueled by raw, desperate courage, the Antari hurl themselves as one man against the Grenadiers. You feel a knot at the pit of your stomach as you see the Antari cut their way through to freedom, leaving their precious supply carts behind. The Antari commander stands fast, guarding the retreat of his men. He holds off his attackers, waiting for the last of his surviving men to win free before withdrawing from his exhausted pursuers. The battle is over. With the battle over, you set your men to aiding the wounded on both sides. Captain Hunter approaches you to shake your hand and offer congratulations on your part in the victory, assuring you that he will be mentioning you in his dispatches. The Grenadiers open up the supply carts to find casks of salt pork, lard, and barrels of strong Antari potato wine, as well as over 600 warm fur cloaks and a stack of thick blankets. It seems that your outpost will neither lack for food nor warm clothing this winter. Captain Hunter looks with approval at the haul of plunder, but still seems disappointed at their inability to capture the Antari commander. He seemed a fine swordsman, that fellow. He kept his head cool even as we hit him from all sides. Seemed like a very able fellow, probably would have caught a fair bit of ransom. Regardless, neither you or your captain have time to dwell on what could have been. You must still haul the captured supplies back to the outpost and recover the wounded. It takes the entire evening and much of the night to get the captured supplies and wounded back to the outpost. Bone-tired and battered, you barely have enough energy to tie up your horse before falling into your bed and immediately losing yourself in a deep, dreamless sleep. 3 weeks later, a messenger is spotted riding up the road from Noringia. He brings with him letters addressed to you from your family and friends, as well as similar posts for the other men of the garrison. More importantly, he brings a copy of the Aetoria Gazette, which contains within its 4 dozen pages news of the war elsewhere. You learned that the supply column you ambushed had been on its way to supply a larger Antari force, poised to strike south at Narinja itself. Without its much-needed winter supplies, the paralyzed Antari army began crumbling in the face of the cold before finally being annihilated in detail by the main force of the king's army in several running skirmishes. The destruction of the Antari main forces also resulted in a raft of promotions for junior officers who had distinguished themselves in the presence of the king or his generals. One of those mentioned is Davis Dal Elson of the Royal Dragoons, who, for his actions in battle, has been promoted to lieutenant. Strangely enough, no particular act of extraordinary bravery or genius was cited as a reason for the extraordinary promotion of a cornet with barely a year's seniority. Why do you think that is? Yeah, perhaps. I think that's... Maybe the Gazette ran out of space to print whatever Elson had done to deserve his promotion. No, I don't think so. He didn't strike me as a person who would use his noble birth on his own to give him an unfair advantage, though. So I think the most likely is that one of his powerful relatives pulled some strings. Knowing of Elson's disposition, you can't help but think that one of his more powerful relatives in Grenadier Square had pushed for his promotion. After all, Elson is an honest fellow who would never try to grab a promotion he didn't deserve, right? Well, that's what I would think. Your first winter in Antar turns out to be a never-ending purgatory of mud, snow, ice, and hail. Thanks to your captured warm weather gear, you return from patrol with your extremities merely stinging from pain, rather than numbed by the telltale symptoms of frostbite. Some days are so full of whipping, biting snowfall that crossing the outpost to report into Captain Hunter is an ordeal in itself. With everyone crammed into the crude, leaky shelters, disease spreads quickly. A dozen of the grenadiers die from strange diseases which you have never heard of before. You and your dragoons are not immune to these foreign sicknesses either. Not a day goes by without 1 or 2 of your men ill from some strange or familiar ailment. By the time the snow finally begins to melt, you are all sickly and emaciated. You meet the first signs of spring with depleted food stores, a terrible case of the flux, and with 3 of your men's horses frozen to death. Thankfully, a supply column from Narinja soon follows, bringing with it food, reinforcements, and some welcome news. In his infinite wisdom, His Grace the Duke of Wolfram, commander of the King's army in Antar, has decided to focus military operations along the River Karan for the foreseeable future. Thus, the small outpost which has served as a base for you and your men over the past year is to be vastly expanded with a palisade, more permanent buildings, and enough room to house 3,000 fighting men and their hangers-on, camp followers, and servants. With this news comes official documentation designating the site of your much expanded outpost as Fort Karan, though you rather think that is more wishful thinking on Wolfram's part than a statement of fact. A steady stream of profiteers and other ne'er-do-wells? Never? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Follow in the wake of the new arrivals. The next week, another column arrives, bringing with them a company of Royal Engineers, 4 small pieces of field artillery, and a half-dozen other small detached units of cavalry from other regiments. They bring with them news that Captain Hunter is to be promoted to Major, and that your long assignment as the outpost's only cavalry officer is finally over. With another 3 dozen cavalrymen now present at the outpost, you are now at more liberty to choose your own assignments. A few options present themselves. Firstly, you can remain on patrol duty while the other cavalry units take over the additional duties of the enlarged outpost. Without the need to also operate as Hunter's at-need cavalry force, you could probably expect an easier time of it. Secondly, you could always draw the easier duty of serving as the cavalry reserve. While that means you will be cooped up in barracks for most of the next year, while the other cavalry units are on patrol, there is always the chance for some emergency or great battle for you to distinguish yourself. Lastly, you can request a promotion to lieutenant. Now that you have the 1 year's seniority needed to be eligible, a promotion to lieutenant would be the natural step forward. Such an advancement would open up the possibility of being assigned the command of an entire troop of 40 dragoons, and thus give you a greater chance of finding yourself in a major engagement. Promotion in the Royal Tiaran Army is a fickle thing. You would need both the appropriate seniority and the funds to pay the difference between the amount you could sell your corner's commission for and the price demanded by the man selling his lieutenant's commission to you. In your case, the going rate for such a step up is about 250 crowns. Hardly an insignificant sum. However, particularly well-regarded officers sometimes have the cost of their promotions covered by regimental funds as a reward for their high reputations, something which you certainly wouldn't be able to manage. How much money do I have? 115. That's certainly not enough. Well, What's our soldiering? It's 62%. We haven't really done much to deserve a promotion to lieutenant, have we? It's difficult to decide. I mean, I don't know what failing to seek promotion to lieutenant would mean. You know what? We're requesting cavalry reserve duty. You inform Major Hunter and your men of your decision the next day.